I've been a professional renovator now for over 20 years, and I can't tell you the dramatic difference that new tiles can bring to your property. Now, it doesn't matter if you're tiling your bathroom, your kitchen splashback, or even the floors across your house, tiles make a huge difference. Good news is they're versatile, low maintenance, and they're very inexpensive to buy these days. And they come in a huge range of colours and textures. So in this video, I'm going to teach you the basics of how you tile like a professional tiler. For your floor area, measure the width and length of your bathroom. If you're planning a standard bath, then deduct the floor space for that. That's your floor area. For your walls, measure the height and width of each wall, allowing for openings like windows and doors. Make sure you order your tiles in one batch to allow for slight variations in colour and texture between different batches of the same tile, and order an extra 10% of both your floor and wall tiles for contingency, for things like cuts, wastage and breakage. In your toolkit, you should have a tile cutter, either a scriber or a heavy-duty cutter, a tile nibbler, tile spacers, notched adhesive trowel, spatula, measuring tape, spirit level, tile adhesive, grout, mallet, sponges or squeegie, a bucket for water for rinsing, and silicone sealant. Tiles need surfaces that are flat, rigid, and completely free of debris, dust and grime. So depending on what you're starting with, you'll need to invest time in preparation. Large tiles in particular, like the popular 6x300 ones, are unforgiving of uneven walls, whereas smaller tiles can cope better with a few imperfections here and there. You may need cement or some other kind of patching compound to fill large gaps or cracked surfaces. You can compensate for slightly uneven surfaces by adjusting the amount of tile adhesive you use. But much better to start with walls and floors that are as flat and level as possible. You might even need to get a plaster in to skim the walls. Or if the walls are particularly wonky or in really bad condition, you might consider some kind of wet area sheeting such as Vellboard fibre cement sheets that you can clad the walls with. One of the biggest fails in any bathroom renovation is not installing your waterproofing correctly. Now, what is waterproofing? It's a membrane that you put over your walls and floors to stop water penetrating into those areas. And if you don't install waterproofing correctly, it can be disastrous, especially if you're doing an apartment renovation where you're on the upper levels of a block, water penetrates through the floor, starts dripping down into neighbouring properties. Nobody wants that. It could also mean that you have to rip out your bathroom and start from scratch again. Now, waterproofing is definitely not a DIY product. You should always use a licensed waterproofer, because what you will need to obtain is what's called a waterproofing certificate. If you're ever selling your property, that waterproofing certificate needs to be attached to the contractor's sale. Once your waterproofing is complete, the next stage is tiling. If you're tiling a bathroom floor, you have to have a certain slope so that your water falls correctly into your floor waste. With the bathroom waterproofed and fully cured, you're now ready to start marking out your tiles ready for laying. The idea is to work out exactly where your tiles are going before you start gluing them down. You want to conceal the cut tiles in the most tucked away areas so the full tiles are used in the most highly visible spots, and to avoid unnecessarily cutting tiles. Any less than about half a cut of tile is too small and will definitely look ugly. You tile from the floor up, but you want to leave your bottom row of wall tiles until last, as you'll need to cut these in line with the floor tiles. So that's probably the last row of tiles you'll do, right at the end. Your first line of wall tiles you'll be laying is the next row up, and you'll need to get a straight base level for these. Use your level or straight edge to create a level base to commence your first row of tiles. You can also use a timber batten temporarily nailed to the wall instead. Now you need to work out the best placement for your row of wall tiles. Find your horizontal centre point by measuring the wall width and dividing it in half. Then start laying out your tiles from the midpoint Once you're happy with the placement and have marked out on your wall where your first full tile goes, you're ready to get tiling. The tools you choose to cut the tile will very much depend on the type and thickness of the tile you're using and how much money you're prepared to outlay to make the job easier. When purchasing your tiles, check with the supplier which cutting tool is recommended for those tiles. Thin ceramic wall tiles can easily be scored and snapped with a manual tile cutter. With the larger, thicker tiles really popular now, you're probably best to hire an electric tile cutter, then use an angle grinder fitted with a continuous rim diamond disc to make angular cuts to go around fittings. You can also buy a dedicated hole cutter for taps, which has a diamond cutter edge, but it's an expensive purchase if you're using it as a one-off. Hole cutters range in size from 12 to over 100 millimeters diameter and are used as a power drill attachment. I'd recommend using a powdered adhesive rather than a ready mix one. For one thing, it's cheaper. Don't mix up too much in one batch as it hardens relatively quickly, so you'll run out of time before you've used it all. Mix up the adhesive according to the manufacturer's instruction. A toothpaste consistency is generally the rule of thumb. The size trowel you use to spread the adhesive on the wall depends on the tile you're laying. Here's a guide provided by the Tile Council of Australia. After applying adhesive to the back of your tile, place it carefully and push it firmly into position, with a slight swivel if necessary. Place your spirit level on top and check the angle is correct. Use tile spacers in between your tiles to keep them perfectly aligned. You have a wide choice of colours when it comes to grout. You can have plain, white, charcoal, and a whole range of colours in between, so you can closely match the colour to your tiles, which is my preferred choice. When the adhesive is dry, remove the timber battens and the tile spacers from between your tiles. Mix up your grout according to the manufacturer's instructions. Then work it well into the joints with a rubber float or squeegie, about a square metre at a time, working across the joint. Wipe off any excess grout from the joint and tiles before it hardens. When all the wall is grouted and dry, wipe over the tiles with a damp sponge until they come up nice and shiny. That's your tiling all finished, but the job isn't truly professional until you've completed the finishing touches. Where you have joins in the wet areas, like around baths, tap fittings, shower roses and vanities, you'll need to silicone to seal out moisture. It's a pretty easy job, but it does require a steady hand. So there you go, you've got all the basic pointers of how you tile like a professional. Now always remember, if it's a big job, call in a licensed tiler, you'll get a better quality outcome. But if it's a small job, have a crack at it yourself. Good luck with your project.